Hello, Casey here with VanTripping.com, and this is Mountain Bluebird, my Sprinter camper van. I'm going to go through the installation of a Van Compass Hidden Winch Mount Bumper as well as a winch, and why I chose the Van Compass Hidden Winch Mount Bumper instead of an actual full aftermarket bumper. And so I'm going to go through those reasons why, my installation, some challenges with it, the tips and tricks, and also a little reason why I chose the winch that I went with, and some actual uses that I put it through as a testimonial to its strength and use for this purpose. I look forward to you watching the video and going through this with you. Okay, let's get to the first question. Why did I add a winch bumper? I added it actually for the recovery points, not for the winch. This is my factory bumper and the black painted grill that I did, but I did want to add a lot of weight. I didn't actually really want the winch, and hence why I didn't want to add a lot of weight. Now, adding the recovery points was key because I do a lot of off-roading or exploring on dirt roads and want to make sure that I was able to be recovered in the event that I got stuck somewhere. And the Sprinter, unfortunately, really doesn't have any factory recovery points other than a standard kind of screw-in hook that most vehicles have on one side. And even though it's very robust, I wanted to add much more robust recovery hooks. But I didn't want to add a lot of weight to the front. An aftermarket bumper adds about 150 pounds. It also lengthens a vehicle, which is already long. It can add about another 8 inches to the length of the vehicle. And it also reduces the approach angle because it both not only lengthens the vehicle, but also comes down lower often than the factory bumper does. So I went ahead and chose the Van Compass Hidden Winch Mount Bumper. I'm very happy with that. Here's a picture of the factory bumper underneath the bumper cover. You can see it only weighs in at about 17 pounds. And the Van Compass winch mount bumper weighed in at about 35 pounds. But when you subtract out the 17 pounds, you only really end up adding about 20 pounds of additional weight to the front without the winch. That gives you 2 really good robust recovery points. It gives you added protection around the def tank and also additional added protection on the front and a lot of strengthening of the frame in the front. So I felt all those things were very important and worth the expense and effort to install the hidden winch mount bumper. At the same time, it didn't stand out or it detract from the factory appearance. It in some way really stand out as having some aftermarket parts and kits, and I didn't have to spend $2,500 to put an aftermarket bumper on it. So I saved a lot of money by doing this. While I was at it, I also went ahead and repainted the factory grill and metal surround around that, which I had previously painted black with black plasti dip. I removed the factory grill in order to do this, make sure I wasn't getting paint into the radiator or intercooler. And as you can see in this picture here, this is what a vehicle looks like without that black paint, and also with the Mercedes star, which is chromed. I had already previously painted all this, but since you have to remove all this to install the hidden winch mount bumper, I went ahead and painted those while I had those off. Removing the bumper cover is actually quite easy. So I removed that, and of course the proximity sensors are in there, which many people with the aftermarket bumpers do have issues with the proximity sensors not reading correctly and setting off errant warnings. So this was another benefit of having a hidden winch mount bumper instead of an aftermarket bumper, is it didn't mess at all with those proximity sensors. I also replaced the horn. As is well known with other videos and stuff, the factory horn on the Mercedes is pathetic. It is literally an embarrassment to use. So I replaced it with some really nice Pia air horns. They fit into the spot where the factory horn is very nicely, easily to install and connect with some waterproof connectors into the factory wiring. And it sounds much better. Here you go. Here's what it sounds like. As you can see here, I'll have the factory radiator grill and bumper cover removed, and the factory bumper underneath the factory bumper cover is shown, as well as the factory horn in the upper left there. Removing all that is fairly easy. There's some clips and stuff that come apart. The Van Compass instructions are quite excellent at walking through all the steps and showing you quite a few details on that. I went ahead and then removed the factory bumper cover and pulled out the bumper, the Van Compass Hidden Winch Bumper. It was well packaged up in this wooden box, wooden crate. However, there was a screw that held the wooden crate together that protruded through into the inside. The bumper did rub against a little bit, got scratched up a little bit. It's shown in a picture here after I repainted it. But I went ahead and did do that. I touched up those parts where there was a few little scratch points in the powder coat, and touched it up with some zinc paint and then also some black metal paint just to make sure it was protected from any corrosion. The screws and bolts and so forth that were provided were well wrapped, and like I said, all the instructions were very good on that. And however, I did run into a problem in that the instructions called for a 2-inch long M8 bolt. However, what I was provided was a 1.5 inch M8 bolt. These are pretty critical bolts as they do hold the bumper onto the frame in several places and do so with some lock nut tight nuts as well. I went ahead and tried the 1.5 inch long nut bolts, but they were not long enough to go through the nylon lock nuts. So I went ahead and had to unfortunately take a run down to the hardware store to pick up some grade 8 zinc coated 2-inch long bolts to replace these. I did not even call Van Compass. It just felt like it was a simple thing for me to take care of, and paid the few dollars to get those better bolts there to make this happen. So there was also, when I took the factory bumper off, there were a few little there was one spot where there's 4 bolts on each of the horns, of the 2 horns on the factory frame. One of them had just a tiny little bit of rust on it, and so it must have just been painted that well in the factory, or had a little paint got scratched off. So I touched that up. And there's also this, what I'll call the factory tow hook that comes out of the front there. It protrudes through. It has an extension to help it guide it out through the factory bumper cover. You do have to cut that off. Yeah, this was the part I was most worried about in the installation. It's a little bit, it's an angled cut. It's obviously some heavy duty metal. It turned out to be quite an easy thing to cut off. It was with the reciprocating saw and a metal blade. It came off quite easily and was not hard to get the angle based on the Van Compass instructions, which were, again, very detailed, excellent dimensions and drawings and pictures in there as to exactly what to do. So I went ahead and cut that off, touched it up again with some paint, and moved forward with attaching the Van Compass bumper, which is very beefy, robust. It actually does add added protection, not just to the entire front end, including also around the DEF tank, the diesel exhaust fluid tank, which the factory bumper partially covers. The Van Compass bumper better covers. It also provides a very nice welded in winch tray. It's very robust, feel very strong. I feel like it is going to be perfectly fine supporting winch loads, even though this is a heavy vehicle. I also have Van Compass's front skid plate and transmission skid plate installed, which reinforces the frame in the front, and so for an angular pull, it will definitely provide a lot more strength for that. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you some actual uses that I've done where I did have to do that once, and I'm glad I have that in there. So moving forward, let's see, probably the hardest part actually with the installation of this Van Compass Hidden Winch bumper was actually cutting the holes in the plastic bumper cover to align with the recovery points that are now provided with this winch bumper. Those recovery points are very robust, they're strong, there is an alignment of them. The Van Compass instructions were very clear as to where to cut those, but unfortunately the measurements they provided weren't exactly lining up with mine. And so it was a bit of a challenge to get those cut in exactly the right spot. And you can see in some of these pictures here where I actually took a white chalk pen and drew around where I thought it had to be, and kind of kept sort of cutting, kept honing in on it and outlining it until I got it right. That white chalk pen just, races right off. But nonetheless, that was my biggest challenge with this. Once I got that installed, you can also see here in getting the winch installed, that was actually not too challenging either, and getting the wiring run over up to my factory auxiliary battery. On my factory auxiliary battery, I also replaced the or added on to the positive terminal of that battery a new Concepts that's new in KNU, and Concepts with a K and a TZ at the end. Ultimate positive battery terminal. This is a battery terminal that has several provisions for all the way up to 1 aught, including 4 and 8 gauge wires to be screwed down. Very nice, very robust. I felt like it was a much better connection than trying to do this on that factory battery terminal in any other way. So I use that. It's also designed and built for very high loads, and so which of course a winch would provide on it. I chose to go with a Smittybilt Generation 3 winch, and the reason why I did is because for a significant lower price point, but pretty big cost savings over, say, a Warn higher end winch, it provided far better feature sets. One, it's full IP67 rated, so it's fully waterproof. The lower end Warn winches do not provide that. It's a much stronger, higher horsepower motor. It's also a more efficient motor, so it actually uses less amps under load, and yet provides far more horsepower. Because it has more horsepower, it actually also has a faster line speed under load than the Warn winch, even faster than their highest end winch. And also, it provides some nice other features. The controller is very nice. It's got a magnetic mount. You can attach right to, say, your fender or your hood while you're working on it. You can just set it down. It'll just stick right to that and then pull right back off. It's very robust. It also provides a nice load indicator and a light built into it. It's got also an accessory lighting port that you can control through the remote. And also, it has a couple of lights built into it, one that lights up the actual spool. So it's really excellent. As you're spooling in or out, you can actually see your rope as it's going in and out, and see if it's getting bunched up or if it's getting, kind of overlapping too much in one side. So I liked all of that. It is absolutely a synthetic rope. I weighed it out here, and you can see from the drawings that the winch itself comes in at just under 50 pounds without the rope and without the controller and the wiring. It's pretty, it's very robust in its weight. The rope only adds 7 pounds, and that tells you really just how beneficial a synthetic rope is compared to a metal rope, which would have weighed several times that amount. So that's, again, a significant benefit of weight savings to the front. I have used this winch several times now, too, for some pretty hard recoveries, and it has had no issues in any way at all. So I'm very happy with the installation of that. Let's see, moving forward a little bit on some of the extras I did here. When I installed the winch, I was not that happy with the Smittybilt hook that's on there. It's in part because of that sort of open connection that it has, the potential for it to kind of dangle in the front and rattle a little bit in the front since it doesn't lay flat against the Hawse fairlead, and also potential for something to come disconnected or pulled out of it. That concern may have been overemphasized. Nonetheless, I went ahead and cut it off. And I realized just how strong that hook was when I cut it off. Because it doesn't have a pin through it, the rope is essentially has a solid connection on the end, and then and that is threaded through at the factory through that hook on the end, and I didn't want to have to unthread it. I kept the factory threading. I protected the synthetic rope with some heat protective tape around it, and I went ahead and put it in my bandsaw and completely ruined a bandsaw blade trying to cut through it. I then took it to a metal chop saw with a really good cutoff blade on a 12-inch chop saw, and went to completely ruin and destroy that blade as well in the process of cutting this off. It probably took about, I want to say about 3 hours to cut this off. I had to cut for maybe a few minutes, let the hook cool down so it didn't get too warm on the synthetic rope. I used an infrared gun to check the temperature of the rope and the hook to make sure it didn't get too hot while I was cutting it. Let things cool off and then go back and cut again, and it was a lot of work. It is a very robust hook that is on the front here. I would have no lack of confidence using it. However, I replaced it with a much nicer Factor 55 FlatLink on the front. It is very highly rated. It lays flat on the front. It's a very nice product. I'm happy I replaced it with that, albeit so much effort to cut off the Smittybilt's hook on the front. I wish instead it was pinned on like Warren does. Would have been far easier and saved me several hours worth of work and a couple of blades that I ruined. Nonetheless, I also replaced with a Factor 55 Hawse fairlink, and I am fairlead. I'm very happy with that. I went with their 1-inch thick version. They do also have a 1.5-inch thick version. I thought that'd be overkill, but it turns out now in hindsight, I probably should have done the 1.5-inch because the bumper cover sits a little bit proud of where the Hawse fairlink mounts up to the Compass Hidden Winch mount bumper. And just to have a little extra radius there for the rope to come out, it does not at all. The 1-inch works perfectly fine, but I think a 1.5 would have been just a nice little added benefit. So nonetheless, I think those look very nice. They're lovely. They're very robust. They just have a really nice look to them, and I am super happy with them. They are solid as can be. Even after several uses, they show no sign of wear, as the anodized coating that Factor 55 puts on these products is exemplary. It is a super high-end military finish, so it looks really great and is very robust. I also, while I was in here, added on a rigid LED light bar. It is a pretty short one because I still want a lot of airflow to get through to the factory intercooler and radiator. So it doesn't really block much. It pretty much is about the same width as the electronic control box for the winch, but it adds a lot of nice light up close for both working with the winch and I found it to be incredibly useful just to add extra light up front when on a trail, and it lights surprisingly far away even though it's a fairly wide angle light. I'm really happy with this light, and I do have it switched from my headliner switch so I can control it while driving and use it at any time. So that has been a really nice addition, and glad that I did that. I also plasti dipped the recovery points after I installed everything up, including the bumper cover, and I plasti dipped the front of them red just simply to highlight them so that you don't just walk by real tight and bump into them, or just to highlight them in low visibility situations where winching in the evening or whatever, and give them a little added protection for when in use. In hindsight, I should have, before these were bolted onto the hidden winch, because they are bolted on. So you install the bumper, then you install the recovery points, and then you install the factory bumper cover over it all. I probably should have went ahead and just dipped these into plasti dip, and that would have gave me a really nice, easy way to do this instead of to spray, spray them with a can of paint of the plasti dip paint and cover tape off the area before spraying them. So that'd be a good tip that I would like to provide if you're going to do this insulation. And really, in conclusion, this has been a fantastic addition for very little added weight other than the winch itself. This has been a really nice comfort to have these recovery points in the front. If anything, just for the recovery points, for the 15 pounds of added weight to gain those recovery points, well worth it over the factory bumper. I would do it just for that reason alone, especially then the fact that it adds no additional length to the vehicle or doesn't worsen your departure angle, and still is very called incognito. You would not even know with those that anything was there if you didn't install the winch. With the winch there, it's still pretty hidden, but I've used it multiple times, including a very angular pull on a very laden vehicle going off a roughly 45-degree side slope. As you can see here, we use the recovery point as an angular point with the winch from this vehicle back to it. to pull it up, and my van is the anchor point. I was a bit concerned with this angular pull. The Van Compass bumper did not even budge in any way. No tweak sounds, no concerns at all. It handled this without even the biggest, any sort of a whimper at all. So I feel very solid, very comfortable with using this in other situations, which I have in multiple other situations, including pulling out a very a Toyota pickup truck that was very stuck in a mud bog and very buried down to its axles in mud, and was able to winch it out, no problems. So again, I feel very strong, very confident on the strength of this bumper, and love that I think this is a great addition to any Mercedes Sprinter van or other vans that Van Compass makes this hidden winch bumper for. And would certainly immediately do this again on another van conversion if I were going to, again, have any particular need for recovery points in the front or desire those. So hope you gain some benefit of this. Certainly feel free to both subscribe, and I'll keep providing more details on other upgrades and things that I do, and my conversion to hopefully help you and others with what you're doing. And also, by all means, write down any comments, and I will try to respond and providing additional details if you have any questions. Thanks so much, and hope you enjoy the video. Bye.